Welcome to the Quantum Biology Podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of the emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, Meredith Oak, QBC co-founder and executive coach, with a friendly reminder: podcasts are conversations, not consultations. Though if you're looking for one, check out our practitioner directory, or if you are a practitioner, we have an upcoming certification launching July 17th. All the info is on our website, quantumbiologycollective.com. In this episode, we sit down with Rachel Tudor, a former ballet dancer who became a practitioner and internationally recognized presenter on fascia and biotensegrity, a new paradigm of anatomy that is based in a non-linear understanding of the body as a holistic organism. Rachel's 30-plus years of experience working with the gradual healing processes of the body ended up saving her own life when she was struck down with a full-scale debilitating autoimmune reaction to a pharmaceutical product in 2021. This conversation covers Rachel's journey to understanding the body at a quantum level and the patience and perseverance it takes to stay on the healing path. Enjoy. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you.
Hi, thank you.
Yes. So you were a wonderful student in the applied quantum biology community, just brought so many great insights to the conversation through many different channels and many different experiences, which we will get into. But I wanted to start with your background as a movement specialist and particularly your understanding of fascia. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, my first background is in ballet.
Okay.
So I studied ballet and did some performing and then became a ballet teacher. And from there, I encountered Pilates, like many dancers do. And studied Pilates and certified in Pilates. And all of that led me to, of course, wanting to understand more about the body. I think especially if you're going to be teaching, that's a much different thing than doing yourself. And so I really wanted to dive more into anatomy and kinesiology and things like that. So I started a lot of classes in self-education how that was concerned. That led me to fascia and fascia, probably back in the early 2000s, when Anatomy Trains came out. Tom Meyer's book, Anatomy Trains, the very first edition. I would say that was my first foray deeper into the world of fascia.
Okay.
I think it's a lot.
So I just want to pause for a sec. For someone who's new to all this or who's not in this world, what is fascia? What are we even talking about here?
Sorry.
No problem.
I'm like, wait, doesn't everybody know?
No, I was thinking, I just jumped right in there and I'm like, well, you know what? There was a time not so long ago, I couldn't have told you what fascia was. So.
Right. Well, and I would say still, you'll get some argument about what fascia is depending on who you're talking to.
That is true. Okay. Yes.
How I would answer that question is that fascia is it's what makes you. Basically, fascia is connective tissue, if you want to call it that. That goes from macro to micro. So it goes from just under the surface of your skin all the way down into the depths of every cell. So it is your communication organ, and it connects absolutely everything from you, from cellular level all the way out to just underneath the surface of your skin. So if we were to take absolutely everything else away and just leave your fascia, there you would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be my definition of fascia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's metaphor. So I think of it as like the quantum superhighway of the body.
Yeah. I think of it
but
as
I don't
too.
really know the technical details.
Yeah. I absolutely
so thank you for supplying those.
Sure. I absolutely think of it as that too, because that's what it is. It is the
Right.
organ of communication in multiple ways.
Okay.
And I think the more you study quantum biology, the more you understand that the basis of all of that is quantum, right?
Right. And so how does the fascia relate in regards to our muscles? How do they work together?
Well, also, you probably get more than one answer for this.
Okay.
But in my world, in my view,
Yes.
muscles are basically a part of fascia. So muscles are nested in fascia. Muscles are completely surrounded by and infused with fascia. And muscles are tensioners. So to me,
Okay.
in terms of
Yeah.
movement, right,
Yeah.
muscles are tensioners. And they provide information and communication in terms of a relationship of tension and compression in the body. So now we're getting into the world of biotensegrity or fascia integrity, living tensegrity, different names
Cool.
for the same thing, where you are one connected whole. That's all you have ever been. And this leads you into the studying of embryology and how we develop. Um, and here is where also some people will say, even the name connective tissue is misleading because nothing actually connects to anything. You're just one whole integrated being, and that's all you've ever been. So
Wow.
languaging, just like with
Yes.
quantum biology,
I'm getting chills hearing you talk about it that way.
yeah. So
Yeah.
just like quantum biology is a new paradigm and it
Mhm.
requires new language.
Yeah.
This idea is also the idea of biotensegrity or fascia integrity is a new paradigm of looking at connectivity in the body and also requires new language. And that gets hard, right? Because you get stuck in old language trying to describe something that's a whole
Yes.
new way of viewing something.
Yes.
So,
And even the questions I'm asking them from a compartmentalized view of like, what does the fascia do and what do the muscles do and how do they talk, like, and how are they connected as though they're separate things. And
right.
this view is that we're all just, it's all
One. Just
one living system.
That's it. Exactly.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So getting back to, you were sort of telling us your story of how you came to learn about fascia. So now I understand the principles that you're working from. And so
Okay.
where did you go next?
So as I started to study fascia, I basically got stuck a little bit because I was like, okay, my first study of the body had been from a biomechanical point of view. Then I started to learn more about fascia, and that level of connectivity for me personally and other peers that I know lead you into a place where you're like, well, that doesn't make sense anymore.
Right.
We can't be machines, right? There are no levers. There are no. So now what?
Right.
And so that led me actually to the study of biotensegrity. Some people say, like I said, fascia integrity, living tensegrity, names for the same concept of you're one connected whole based on relationships of tension and compression.
Okay.
And the fascia is really what that concept is based on and is all about. The more and more and more we learned about fascia and its different roles and its connectivity to everything, the more that paradigm starts to make more sense. So that study led me into really changing the way I teach and the way I move and the way I think.
Mm-hmm.
And right, and leads you down a million rabbit holes, just like starting to study quantum biology does. And so through the help of different mentors and things like that, and study. My own practice and my own teaching evolved, I would say, into much more of, I'd say now, an intuitive movement practice.
Okay.
Just, the body knows, right? We have that innate wisdom, just like it can heal itself. It can, well, I shouldn't say just like, it's part of it. Movement, intuitive movement, is part of that innate knowledge the body has to heal itself. And when we can get that intellectual mind we have about what's right and what's wrong out of the way, and especially when we can do it in the frequencies of nature outside, right? When we're getting all that amazing information that we need that heals us, that's when all the fascia magic happens, in terms of unwinding and, healing scars, healing trauma in the body, healing adhesion, all those kinds of things. Allowing yourself to return to integrity. When your fascia really has integrity, then, it's all systems go, right? You're moving well, you're functioning well, all the communication is happening because there's nothing impeding the flow, those kinds of things.
Wow. So interesting. Okay. So you have your dancer background, the Pilates background, and then you moved into the tensegrity world. And so what would it look like when a client would come to you? What does it look like to work with this sort of intuitive movement? Like, what do you ask people to do? I'm super curious.
Okay. Well, the first thing that I do is take a comprehensive history. So in that way, it would be, more like going to, I am not a medical professional, but it would be more like that, right? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Where you're taking a comprehensive history, because all anybody has ever done or been, or any of that, is all part of who they are in that moment in front of you, coming to you for a reason, for whatever reason has brought them there. So the history is just tell me your story, what has led you here. Yeah. And then once I have some background, then through, now I've been working as a movement specialist or some kind of movement teacher for over 30 years. So I think that's where experience comes into play. I basically just kind of decide on a beginning course of action. And that might look like making a suggestion of a place to begin. Let's say, let's have you come and lie down on the ground. And I might suggest a beginning place to move, or a beginning kind of a breath sequence combined with movement or something like that. It's always going to involve some kind of pushing or pulling, push the ground away. If there are props, I do have props. I do still use some Pilates equipment, just not in a traditional way. And just based on what I'm seeing and the history I've taken a lot, also in terms of body language and what hasn't been said, will tell you a lot as well. Setting the person up in a place that I believe will be helpful to them, imperatively will feel safe to them, because they have to feel safe. And then just start to make some gentle suggestions about how to begin movement. Like I said, it could just be breath. Breath is movement. And then we just kind of start and see where it takes them and see what their reaction to it is. Some people just roll with it and it's great. They're very open and uninhibited. Other people, it's harder. If there's a lot of trauma or things are stuck, people can have kind of a kinesthetic amnesia sort of a thing happen and just need a little more guidance sometimes. So it really depends on the situation.
Right. So that's what's so interesting is I'm hearing that and that's probably where the intuitive movement, the intuitive piece comes in. It's not a prescribed set of movements. It's you
Right.
work with the person and see what their individual need is based on where they're at and what you see happening.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
100% individual. And it's not that there aren't necessarily some movement sequences that I might do, or certain setups or things like that with equipment to help somebody get started, or to initiate certain kinds of rotations and counter rotations within the body, or to sort of get things gliding a little bit in relation to other things. But once we start somewhere, it's always going to be, where does this person take it from here?
Okay.
And what is that going to lead us to next?
Okay.
So, yeah.
So interesting. Okay. So you're based in this very intuitive practice of movement, and this very holistic understanding of the body and the fascia and the muscles, and who we are is who we've always been. I love that. That's so beautiful. And now you're sort of entered the paradigm of applied quantum biology. So we'll get into how the path that took you there in a little bit. It's pretty crazy, but I just would like for now just to layer on, you mentioned doing movement practices outside and, the benefits of that. So tell us a little bit more about how you have expanded your already very holistic approach, how it's changed with this new paradigm.
Well, for me personally, it's that I'm outside every morning during UVA rise, right here in this backyard, doing my own intuitive movement practice. So, in that case, I'm just out here, using, maybe I might run down there and like climb that tree, or and see what happens, or sing, use the hill or something. You just use your environment, right?
Right.
And so that it's always outside, that it's specifically during the time of UVA rise is something.
Okay, so tell us why.
Well, that's because I learned this from taking your course, and Carrie and all the great people involved in QVC and quantum biology, because of all of I like how Carrie calls it neurotransmitter magic that happens during UVA, right. Where the signaling of the light tells our bodies all kinds of important things about what chemistry to turn on and off during that time.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the UV light is sending signals to the body, and then the body's movement is creating signals within the body, and that it's all working together.
Exactly. And I remember taking from Carrie and her talking about how important she felt walking during UVA rise was. But when I first started doing this, right, I couldn't walk. And so I was just out here, like wiggling, something like that. And so that evolved for me into my full intuitive movement practice being out here during UVA rise. And so I personally do that instead of the walking at that time. But
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So since it came up, let's get into that. So you were an intuitive movement specialist, background in dance and fitness and biotensegrity. Having a lovely life, contributing to humanity, helping people heal. And then just trying to think what words to use here. So as part of the pandemic response, it was suggested that, it was suggested to most people, or more strongly than suggested, I would say. Anyway, you ended up getting some injections.
I did.
Okay. Yeah. So then tell us what happened.
So this would have been March and April 2021. Mm-hmm. I got 2. And after the first one, I did have an adverse reaction. I had a lot of vertigo. And that lasted for about 2 weeks. I was working with a naturopath at that time who put me on a protocol that was supposed to help with any kind of reactions.
Okay.
And these injections are supposed to be a month apart, right? So I went on the protocol for 2 weeks. I had terrible vertigo. And then it seemed to me the protocol worked because I got better. And so now when I tell this story, I'm like, what was I even thinking?
I know. I know.
But so then I went ahead and did the second one a month later. And after that, for me, it was lights out. I had a horrible, horrible adverse reaction where the vertigo came back, and then a litany of other symptoms, I suppose you could call them. I really believe it's a syndrome because it causes I think so much mitochondrial damage that everything just goes completely haywire. And that's what happened to me. So that was in April of 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. So then everything stopped.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your whole life stopped. You couldn't really move.
No, I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I could just lay there trying to find a position where I didn't have terrible vertigo. So I can give you a list of symptoms, which I always have to read because there's so many. I feel like I'll forget some.
For sure.
I wrote them down.
And this happened like immediately. So it was like you got your second shot, which, you were explicitly told would be okay.
Yeah.
So, of course we all understand that. And then was it like that day, the next week? Like when did you start feeling?
I think within 24 hours, I had terrible vertigo again. So, basically just boom. And then within a few days, I had all the things I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
And then they actually continued to get worse for about the course of a year. And I had some things that would get a little bit better, and then something else would get worse, and then it would kind of switch around and stuff like that. But then for the course, basically the next year, I had all of these things happening. All right. So I had chest pain, right? Very common. I had chest pain, and I went to the ER actually. They determined I wasn't having a heart attack or a stroke, and then they sent me home. Continuous vertigo. I had a lot of fevers, terrible nausea, which also comes with vertigo. I had excruciating headaches. And along with that, this heaviness, like your head just weighs 1,000,000 pounds. I had chronic nerve, joint, and connective tissue pain. I mean, to me, those aren't separate things, but we have to have a language. So I had internal tremoring. So that's where inside you kind of feel like when your cell phone vibrates. Yeah. But it's constant.
Inside your body?
Inside your body. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And it's just constant. Like, I'm doing this, but it doesn't necessarily show on the outside, but you feel it inside. Then I had incapacitating brain fog. Couldn't think at all. Debilitating fatigue. So you're so tired, it would be like your house is on fire. You can't get yourself up and out the door to save your life. Like that's how tired you are. Wow. Then I had neurological changes. So like acquired TBI basically. And
wow. So you had the symptoms of TBI, even though you didn't hit your head.
Right, exactly. Okay. So I have vision impairment, couldn't think, cognitive regression, speech impairment, like couldn't talk, couldn't find words. And then I had histamine pathology all the time, hives, rashes, all different kinds of things. And then finally, on top of all of that, I ended up with an autoimmune diagnosis. I had antibodies that looked like lupus under the microscope.
Oh my God. It's like your entire body went into chaos.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. So it's like not just one thing happens to you, but all systems go haywire. I think now that I can look back on it and have the quantum biology lens to look through, like we were saying before, I just think your mitochondria are so affected by it that, there's no, not no, but there's very incorrect, I guess you could say. I don't know, I'm struggling for language. This crowd knows what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Not good things are happening for you. Your mitochondria.
Yes.
So, and you don't have enough redox, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't be happening. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And redox, generally speaking, would be sort of like our mitochondria's ability to keep itself healthy, like a very simple way to put it.
I think certainly there's obviously not enough net negative charge happening, in the body, or this response wouldn't happen. So,
right.
Yeah.
That is absolutely, I mean, I've heard you tell this story before, and I'm like, oh my God, this is extreme. You had sort of every single system in your body basically started freaking out.
It did. Absolutely. And even though I had a terrible response to it and was sick for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
There's people who had it much worse, right? And who had things like strokes happen and heart attacks happen, right? And So.
Right. So your situation is interesting in that it wasn't like one crisis event like that in those situations. Right. It was just like an ongoing systems failure.
Exactly.
Or systems chaos. It sounds more like symptoms and all these things for things that you don't have. And
yeah. For me, I felt like, I would read about other things in vaccine injury groups. I would, read about other people's experiences and stuff, people who had some, unfortunately, very big traumatic events happen to them. And I would kind of feel like I had a toe in all of those waters, like every single one of those waters, but my body didn't dive all the way into one, just kind of.
That's what it sounds like. It's like a buffet of every single possible adverse reaction and like a little bit of each.
Exactly. Yeah. That's how I felt.
Wow. Okay. So you're somebody who was seeing a naturopath who works in a holistic healing modality. So what was, how did you start? And I also know from knowing you, they're extremely diligent and proactive. So tell us what the next steps were.
So the next steps with that were basically cabinet fulls of supplements and some medication, for the vertigo. I tried meclizine, didn't do anything, nothing. And then bucket loads of supplements, trying to, all the different vitamins. And I can't even name them all. Just, there were so many to the point where, it's like you're taking something for every single thing that I just listed to you. You're taking at least one thing, if not more things, to try and address every single one of those symptoms. Right. So in a way, it's still a reductionist view. Yeah. Because it's like, okay, for vertigo, we're going to do this. For the headaches, we're going to try, right?
You're still treating the symptom.
Right. Yeah. And so I ended up having to take so many things in a day that I couldn't take them all because I didn't feel well enough to get all of that down. And I also felt like, it was so many capsules. It was
my God.
like a bowl full of capsules that I had to try to get through, in multiple times in a day. If you're supposed to be taking, take this one 3 times a day and take that one twice a day, and then, and stuff. And I, as diligent as I tried to be, I often failed to get them all down just because I felt like such crap. And I just, I couldn't.
No.
And so, like I said, I mean, I had a little bit of, some things would get a little better and then something else would get a little worse. And, but it was that I was constantly very ill and, too ill to work, couldn't really live. Right. I mean, you're literally just laying there like a blob trying to find a place where you're less miserable. So, and that's just day after day after day after day. So, and you think to yourself, oh, okay, well, let's see how it is in a week. Well, the week goes by. Okay, another week. And the next thing you know, 5 months have gone by and you're like,
yeah.
This is not getting better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And I know, there are some things that I didn't try that, low dose naltrexone was suggested to me. And I know a lot of people, I think have had success with that. I personally just didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do anything having to do with any kind of steroid or anything like that. I know it's supposed to be, I know how that it's supposed to be and can be very good. That was just my personal choice. I didn't want to.
Okay.
But other than that, I tried everything that was suggested to me.
Right. Okay. And then you get to that place that anyone who's had a mystery chronic illness knows very well, which is like, I've tried everything that I know of in the world that I'm willing to try. And I'm not really making a lot of progress. Right. And it's a tough place.
Yeah.
And somehow, so how did you work through that part of it?
Well, I had to have been scrolling on Instagram because I found Carrie's Instagram account.
Okay. So that's at Carrie B Wellness for anyone listening.
Yes. Yeah. Carrie Bennett, Carrie B Wellness, and started reading that. And because of the study that I'd already been doing into fascia and into living tensegrity, it made sense to me right away. I was like, oh yeah. Oh yes.
Right. You're like, this resonates. Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
And Carrie talks beautifully about fascia and
she does
from the quantum perspective. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, just when you start reading about it or you start learning about it, because, from her account, actually, I found Quantum Health TV. So then I joined Quantum Health TV, found you guys and started listening to all those videos. And I was like, oh, this makes perfect sense.
Right.
In fact, I remember listening to Dr. Cruz's one about food turning into light, and it's like a light show in your, in your gut. And I was like, so I remember that very clearly. And just made so much sense. So I thought, well, I have to just learn more about this because, and how do I apply these ideas and stuff like that. So, so the very first thing I did was take a workshop from Carrie, and then Carrie and Corey, because they were doing workshops together. So I took a few of those, and like I said, I listened to everything on Quantum Health TV, and at the same time, or not the same, but a very similar time, I also found Veda Austin, who has a water crystallography technique, and that cool. Also goes perfectly with quantum ideas.
Yes. Yeah. Her work is so amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so through both of those things, I basically started into quantum protocols and started basically making my own frequency medicine using Veda's crystallography technique.
Okay. All right. So I just want to break that down a little. So you say quantum health strategies. Just give us a quick overview of what you mean by that.
So at this time I still couldn't walk, but I knew I had to get outside for sunrise, UVA rise, UVB rise, and sunset. Okay. So my husband carried me out here, and he would actually make me a little nest. Like, he would put pillows and little blankets right here, and just carry me out here. And I would have my feet on the ground, my hands on the ground, and I would just lay here for hours. So, so at first, right, I would have to set my alarm for sunrise and come out. And then I would be out here for, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 minutes. There's some other things I knew about already too, through the study of fascia, and just frequency and things like that, which are, how effective breathing exercises can be, how effective humming can be, right? That you want to try to move any way that you can.
So the humming is effective because it's a form of movement for your body.
It's a form of movement, and it's also a form of frequency, right? Okay. Yeah. And so
it's like a self-generated healing frequency.
Yeah. Self-generated healing frequency. It's a vibration, right? Mm-hmm. So it's creating oscillation. It's stimulating the vagus nerve. It's doing all kinds of great things. It's releasing nitric oxide. It's doing all of these, vasodilating and doing all kinds of good things. The other thing I haven't mentioned yet is that I'm a student of an energy medicine called Jin Shin Jyutsu, which is a touch practice. You could liken it to acupuncture, but it's with your own hands or a practitioner's hands. And so what's lovely about that is you take it with you anywhere you go. So it's a self-help modality. So let's say you go to a Jin Shin Jyutsu practitioner and they help to determine kind of what you need help with energetically, what kind of flows you need. Yeah. There's always going to be a self-help practice that you can do, that, they can show you what to do. And then the more you study it, the more you can be self-determining about those kinds of things. So that's something that I would do as well, is, whatever flows were being determined that I needed help with most at the time. That's something that I would try to do outside also. So I was holding the Jin Shin Jyutsu flow, humming,
yes, and being outside in the early morning light, right? Having all those frequencies sort of set your hormonal processes and your circadian rhythm and all the rest of it.
Exactly. And then, so then he would bring me back in. I would come back out for UVA, do the same thing at that point, because that's all I could do. Same thing for UVB, because I want to say when I first found Carrie, it must have already been when UVB was here in my latitude, because I live north. And so there's not always UVB. Right. And then do the same thing around the sunset hour. So instead of just being a blob inside, trying to find a place, just to have some level of comfort or life or whatever. I was like, well, might as well just do that outside.
Outside. Yeah.
So I started doing it outside, and that ended up working. That ended up changing everything.
Wow.
So
what was that trajectory like? So the key change that you made was to, I guess you also got rid of all the artificial light in your house after sunset, and then
Yes.
put your physical body in the natural light during the day.
Yes.
And so what started to happen?
I would say that slowly, but surely, the symptoms started to lessen.
Okay.
So it wasn't, it's not like go outside and do this for a week and bam, you'll be better. But you do it consistently every single day. You do the best you can with it. Like you talked about, you also do all the things to protect the rhythm that you're in training with your lifestyle inside. And then slowly but surely, like I was saying, things started to improve. And one of the big things that actually also helped my vertigo improved was Jin Shin Jyutsu. It was being able to go to my practitioner again. And there's a specific flow. It's actually called the dizzy flow. And once I was able to get into her and have the dizzy flow a few times, that made a major difference in terms of how much vertigo that I was dealing with. But to me, all of these things were coming together because they were all starting to happen at the same time, right? So I think the efficacy of those kinds of modalities is increased if you're also living a circadian life.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So it's like getting the circadian rhythms aligned, getting some charge back in your body gave you enough energy to be able to go back to the practitioner, which helped alleviate some of the other symptoms. That modality helped with the dizziness, which gave you more energy so you're on more of a virtuous feedback loop than a downward spiral.
Right. Okay. And the other thing that I personally did was go off everything else I was taking, because I wanted to have a baseline of what could my body do for itself on its own. So I stopped all my supplementation and just said, I want to see what happens in terms of being outside, light, grounding, right? Yeah. All of those frequencies. And like you had mentioned, doing everything I could inside as well. Wi-Fi off, changed all the light bulbs, blue light blockers, turn all my screens red, right? Pulled my bed further from the wall. We lifted the head of our bed too by a little bit, put furniture risers under them. That helps with lymphatic flow, which, is part of what's happening in the repair processes at night. So we did that. Put my devices in airplane mode most of the time. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else, just all the things.
Just all the things. So, yes.
Yeah. Kept the windows open constantly. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Basically never turned our lights on, even though we now only have incandescent bulbs in our house, that kind of thing. Candlelight at night, right? That kind of stuff. So I just went all in because I thought, you have to, I think, for it to really have the benefit. Yeah. And when you're very, very sick, I think you're either going to make a full commitment to it and do it and see what happens, or you're not going to really know. So,
yeah. Yes. And your commitment was full on. And it's so interesting to me that you had the commitment, but also the patience to give it time to work. And it sounds to me like you created a living environment for yourself that was conducive to your healing, as opposed to a living environment that was adding any extra layers of stress that your body needed to fight against.
Right. Absolutely. Well, I think part of having the patience is, from what I do, I understand that change takes time.
Right.
especially working with fascia, fascia change is slower and it's different than muscle. We can change muscle pretty quickly, right? You can change muscle fiber pretty fast.
Yeah.
But changing the fascia, even though it has longer lasting benefit, takes longer.
Right.
You can be looking at 6 months to 2 years to really bring on long lasting change in terms of the structure of your fascia. So,
and what do you do differently to
restructure
fascia compared to, say, building up muscle?
Well, you can build up muscle, like all you really have to do is pick up a dumbbell, right? That you feel is kind of heavy.
Lift something heavy and your muscle will form.
It's not going to take you very long to see the muscle fiber change.
Yeah.
Right. And to see that you've added more protein into that tissue, basically, right? To see that you've enlarged it. Okay. But in doing that, at least in my world, that's all you've done. You've just made it, you made it bigger and you've made it a little more of a tensioner. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But in order for your fascia to really change, that's about patterning, right? That's about changing the patterning of how you move and the habits that your body has developed over time, right? Over the whole time that you've been you. So from the very moment you began to develop, and all the things that go into the patterns that we develop in terms of how we move and how our bodies are held together and that kind of a thing. And so what that repatterning looks like is, first of all, that it takes time because it took you time to get there. So it's going to take you time to kind of unlearn certain patterns and then potentially relearn in a different way. And so I would say it takes time and it takes, you could say repetition. It is repetition in a certain way, but the movements itself aren't necessarily repetitive.
Right.
So,
yes. So consistency. Even
consistency,
if it's
right. And with what I do, it's all about rotation and counter rotation. We're round beings. We're Tauruses, the geometry of a Taurus. We're basically,
so that's where it's like hollow in the middle and then it comes out around.
Exactly.
At articulating shapes, but
that's right. Yes. Correct. And so implosion, explosion, right? All of that. And our gut tube is, you could think of a donut. That's the gut tube is the whole. Okay. And we're just one connected thing around that tube. It looks like we have levers and it looks like we have, we call them appendages or whatever, but we're not. We're just one round thing. Right? We're one round thing, and that is in constant communication with our internal and external environments. And within the roundness of us are all of these other spiraling roundnesses that that counter rotate, right? And counter glide. Right. And when those have an appropriate relationship of tension and compression, you have integrity in the structure. Okay. And so basically the donut holds itself the way that it was meant to. Okay. If you have some kind of inappropriate relationship of tension and compression happening, then you could call it, a deflation maybe, or something like that, right? There's something happening in the structure where it's not as like popped out or propped up as it should be. And so those are the kinds of things that I address in what I do.
Okay. And that is when you talk about the integrity of the fascia or restructuring the fascia. We're looking at that whole thing.
Right.
And so, and then, now it makes a lot of sense to me how you were able to hold those principles in mind for your mitochondria.
Exactly.
And give them enough time
to
reorient themselves in a supportive environment with healthy light and healthy grounding. And
right. And I think, through my own healing of previous injuries and just so many years of working with so many different kinds of bodies and so many different people, a healing journey, it's like that. Right.
Yes.
I mean, you're getting better, but it's not linear in any way. Right. It's just,
we're going around the mountain.
Yeah. Right. And there can be times where you sort of feel like, and then a little bit, you're like, oh, okay. So, you just gotta hang in there. You just keep doing and doing and have some faith, So, but I think that at that point too, it's like anything that makes you feel just like anything is improving is so exciting. After so long of just nothing happening.
Yes.
So, and I can remember even before I found anything about quantum health, just anytime that it was really nice outside, I would be like, take me outside. I want to go outside. I mean, the instinct is there for a reason, right?
Yes.
Especially when the sun is shining and it's a beautiful day, all we want to do is go outside.
Yes.
So,
our bodies know. They're like, we're craving that. Yeah.
Right.
I was talking to Laura Kisman on a podcast, and she was saying, before she knew anything about anything, there was one time that she went cross country skiing in her bikini. I just had this urge to have as much as my body in the sun as possible.
Right. I think all of us do, especially when it's beautiful out. We have that built in. And the once you start to learn more about quantum biology, you're like, oh, well, duh.
Yeah. Right.
Just duh in big letters.
We evolved as beings of light, under light, in light and darkness.
Right. But when you're not, necessarily immersed in that, it's just, okay. If we believe in intuition at all, right, there's got to be a reason why when weather is like this, like I'm having a beautiful day here today, all anyone wants to do is, not go to work, not do anything, just grab their bathing suit and run outside.
Yes. Yes. It's all the cells in our body calling.
Right.
Calling us home.
Right. Right. And I've been wondering about this too, that so many people now are living a life, unfortunately, that's so deprived of those natural frequencies. Mm-hmm. And we hear a lot about people end up afraid of the sun, right? Because what do? They don't really think that you have to be smart about sun exposure necessarily. Yeah. When you're talking about no sunscreen, no sunglasses, all of those things. And they're following their instinct in a way when they go on vacation or something, or it's a nice day, and then they run outside for hours at the brightest time of day. In a way, their instinct is pulling them out there, but because of the lifestyle, they're so unprepared for all of that information, right? Yes. Then it's leading, into them burning and all the stuff that we know about. But that's unfortunate. I feel like.
And that is also a good point for someone who's new to this listening. Is yes, there is a safe way to go outside starting in the morning and not, not putting virgin skin in the noonday sun, exposing it to the infrared in the morning, and, building up a tolerance and not eating processed food and then drinking a bunch of alcohol and going in the sun, all these things.
Right.
play a role for sure.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
My phone by accident. So, because I'm excited about it, so I wiggle around.
Yeah. Oh, so amazing. So do you have any final thoughts, Rachel, as to wrap up this story? And I think we'll have to do a whole other podcast on the crystallography. I want to go down that rabbit hole, but I feel like we've covered a lot of ground. So we'll save that for a part 2.
Yeah,
I'd love to explore that. So yeah,
I would just say, because what happened to me was I had that diagnosis of autoimmune.
Yeah.
And I worked with all of these different things for about a year and a half. Yeah. And when I had another blood test, those autoimmune antibodies were gone. They were negative. So that gave me some kind of...
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, that gave me some, right. Even though I knew I was much better because I just felt so much better. Yes. And I could do so much more, but that gave me something quantifiable, Nice
to get that hard evidence.
Right.
So just to wrap it up, so everyone understands, because I did a social media post about this and everyone was like, how long did it take? How long did it take? I'm like,
yes. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So you went from having a kaleidoscope of chaotic autoimmune reactions that were not progressing in a good direction. And right. It was, so you're switched from a sort of a supplement approach to a light approach, light and water approach, light water magnetism. And then it was about a few months. So the results, so you started to know that you were going in the right direction. I'm just going to sum up and you tell me so you felt like you were headed in the right direction. So you stuck with it. It gave you enough energy to start trying other things, which gave you enough energy to keep going in that direction. And so it was about a year and a half where, would you say you feel like yourself again, or is there residue from this experience?
That's a great question. I would say yes to both those things.
Okay.
I feel like myself, and actually, to be honest, in a lot of ways, I think I feel better. I feel better than I did before. Wow. But there is some residue, and I would say that those things are mostly neurological. Okay. And it's one of those things where I really feel like whatever this does it's very sticky. It's very stubborn and determined to try and stay in you, right? And stay with you somehow. And so I think you just have to keep at it and keep at it. Just keep doing the protocols, because that's what healed me in the first place. And that, in my mind, is what's going to continue to heal me. Yes. And every time I talk to you, my dogs start barking.
Hi, guys. You're enjoying the podcast too.
And so, like last time we were talking was the second spike protein special that you guys did. And at that particular time, I was feeling like I was having a little bit more like neurological stickiness. It's been a little bit since then, and I'm feeling better with a lot of that. And I actually think part of it is, we're coming into summer here. The sun is stronger, right? All of those things I think are making a difference. So, but I do think that with this particular injection situation, I don't know if I should say this, but I guess I will anyway. It feels to me like the intention was to make it stick. And it takes a lot of diligence to get it to let go, to keep that from continually happening.
Okay. Like to at some point move out of your system whatever is in there that's
Right. Yeah.
Continuing to cause problems.
Yeah. Yes. But I also believe nothing is going to overpower nature.
Yeah.
So no matter what the hubris of humans tries to do.
I know. We're so dumb.
Tries to destroy or whatever you want to call it. Right. Nature will always win in the end. So
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well,
so I just, get out there and let all of those frequencies do what they're supposed to do. Your body does remember that. Don't think it doesn't. It does.
It does. We'll go outside and hum in the sun.
Exactly. Bounce around. And if you can't bounce around, this is how I started.
Wiggling your fingers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Rachel, thank you so much for sharing this story. And thank you so much for being the person that you are to come through this and share the wisdom that you learned and give other people who are struggling with autoimmune situations from whatever the cause may be to some hope, because it's tough. There's so many things happening now and there's just not a lot of answers. So
yeah,
to hear someone who found them and that's the other thing is like where there are answers, sometimes it's subtle and gradual.
Absolutely.
So appreciate that perspective of yours. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. It's beautiful. And I look forward to part 2.
Me too.
We're getting to your water healing.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, I could talk about any of this all day, but especially the water. I love the water. So.
Okay. Well, we'll get that on the books. So everyone look out for the part 2 of this interview. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.